Welcome to Movielover22. It's the show that doesn't think too highly of itself, lest it get too big for its britches and I'll have to shut down. Today we're going to be talking about the movie Ruby Sparks. Definitely a good favorite of mine. It's directed by Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Faris. I will say I did zero research about how to say people's names. That may or may not be obvious. The movie is written by Zoe Kazan. JD and VF have a marvelous background in film, with indie powerhouses like Little Miss Sunshine, which I think is a must-see, even though some weird moments, and also have directed a boatload of music videos for artists like Red Hot Chili Peppers, REM, Extreme, Smashing Pumpkins. They did Korn's Freak on a Leash, and Weezer's Say It Ain't So. Zoe Kazan also wrote Wildlife with her co-star Ruby Sparks co-star Paul Dano, who directed it, and while I haven't seen it, I have been meaning to. I just forget about it a lot. She's also a great actress, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. The movie was shot by Matthew Libatique, who is known for frequently collaborating with Darren Aronofsky for Black Swan, Requiem of a Dream, Pi, Noah, and Mother, which was a piece of shit, as well as Venom, Birds of Prey, A Star is Born, The Circle, Sheetrack, Straight Outta Compton, Cowboys and Aliens, Iron Man 1 and 2, Gothica, and Phone Booth. It's a pretty incredible career with a wide spectrum of good movies and pieces of absolute shit. But hey, good for you, Matt. The cinematography in this movie is very clean, pleasant, non-intrusive, slips under the radar, just like good filmmaking should. There are many shots that made me take notice just because they were nice to look at, like the opening image of, where it says Ruby Sparks in the sky as if it were written by a plane. Like cloud, whatever. Ruby Sparks was created by Zoe Kazan, by the myth of Pygmalion, who was a king and sculptor who fell in love with the statue he created. She loved the story of a person being reduced to an idea of a person. And let me just say, I absolutely love this movie, and I always will. I could almost end this episode here, but there's still a lot to say, and it's my show, so I can decide when I end it. Ruby had a budget of $8 million and made about $9.3 million. Kind of disappointing, but it is an indie flick. Before we get any more into the episode, let's hear from our listeners. Just kidding, no one has said anything. Let's talk about the cast. Ruby Sparks stars Paul Dano, Zoe K, Annette Bening, Antonio Banderas, Steve Coogan, Elliot Gould, and Chris Messina. Paul Dano plays Calvin. Paul is one of my favorite actors ever. He's phenomenal. He was in Little Miss Sunshine, There Will Be Blood, Where the Wild Things Are, Night and Day, Cowboys and Aliens, Looper, 12 Years a Slave, Love and Mercy, Swiss Army Man, and he plays the Riddler in the upcoming Batman movie. The man is an artist. I'm going to watch anything he's in. Zoe K plays Ruby. Zoe was in Revolutionary Road, The Pretty One, What If, In Your Eyes, My Blind Brother, and The Big Sick. She's a very talented actress, lots of good projects under her belt. And I think the only one of those I didn't really enjoy was In Your Eyes. But I just didn't enjoy it. Annette Bening plays Gertrude. Annette was in Mars Attacks, American Beauty, 20th Century Women, and a ton of movies that I've never seen. Antonio Banderas plays Mort. Mort is a weird fucking character. Enjoyable to watch, but I think more of a free spirit than I would want to spend too much time with. Antonio has been in plenty of ultra major movies over the last 30 years, including Philadelphia, Interview with a Vampire, Robert Rodriguez's Mexico trilogy, The Mask of Zorro, Spy Kids, Frida, Machete Kills, The Expendables 3. Definitely a titan of the industry, and I think we can all agree on that. Steve Coogan plays Langdon. When I think of Steve Coogan first, I think of Tropic Thunder. And then I think of his bits from the Trip trilogy with Rob Brydon, where they do impressions of Michael Caine at each other. Look those up. Those are great. Anyway, he's been in The Indian in the Cupboard, Ella Enchanted, Around the World in 80 Days, Marie Antoinette, Night at the Museum, Hot Fuzz, The Other Guys, Our Idiot Brother, What Maisie Knew, and Philomena. He's good. I like Steve Coogan. Chris Messina plays Harry. I think most people know Chris from Devil, that wannabe horror movie that was produced by M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong, but I know him from Ruby Sparks first and foremost. He was also in You've Got Mail, the greatest rom-com on the planet. Was he? Okay, hold on. I'm going to need a... You've Got Mail. Who was he in that? Oh my gosh. He's when that lady is looking for the shoe books at the Fox bookstore, and that poor salesman has no idea what on earth she's talking about. It's him. That's the guy. How do you spell that? Oh my gosh. That's amazing. I had no idea that's who that was. Why didn't I look that up the first time? Anyway, he's also in Julie and Julia, Like Crazy, which is a fantastic movie as well, and Argo, which I haven't seen, but I would like to. Elliot Gould. As Dr. Rosenthal. I've literally only seen Elliot in the Ocean's 11 movies. And yeah, so that's cool. He was also in A Bridge Too Far, Naked Gun, 33 1/3, and American History X, which I have seen, but if you ask me to say anything about Elliot Gould in those movies, I would have no idea. So, that's cool. Let's talk about what I loved. I loved The Therapist. I don't care about Elliot Gould and the handful of movies I've seen him in, but I love how he talks to Calvin, gives him the assignment, even though Calvin has writer's block and says that it's just for him, and Calvin asks him if it can be bad. And he says that he'd like it to be very bad. That's just good, straight up, almost mentor type stuff right there. I'd be that guy's friend. I'd hire him to be my therapist if I needed one. Just the line, I love it when you say stupid things. Please be my friend. Please. So good. So good. One of the things I love most about Calvin's character is his insecurity. He found incredible fame at the age of 18, and now, as he's approaching 30, people can't see him as anything but a genius, to the point where he can't stand to hear the word and chides his therapist for using it. He's uncomfortably steered into conversations with creatives who want to make movies from his book, or to speak on the art of writing the great American novel, which he has zero interest in doing, and therefore has zero interest in those conversations. He just wants to be happy and left alone and not to talk to people because people are assholes. It must be one of the greatest hardships of being famous, is being one-dimensional beings to normal people, which means normal people either love you or hate you. Calvin wants to be human, just like Ruby. One of the quotes I can't help but laugh at is when Harry says, "You manifested a woman with your mind." It's amazing. It makes me giggle. And I also love the interaction between Calvin, Dr. Rosenthal. You're a genius. I thought you didn't like that word. Okay, well then you're really, really, really super fucking smart. That's really, really good. The music of this movie is by Nick Urata. Again, did no research on how to say names. Of the Colorado-based band Devachka. If you've seen Little Miss Sunshine, you'll recognize their song How It Ends as the opening song to the film. The soundtrack to Ruby Sparks is phenomenal, and everything about it suits it perfectly. I wouldn't have it any other way. This movie got me listening to Devachka, and it was a great decision. Hi, puppy. They remind me of a happier Morrissey, kind of. I really don't know how to describe them beyond that. Check them out, and honestly, let me know what you think. That can be a message, the first message from this show. Let me know what you think of Devachka. I like it. They also do a really good version of the Neverending Story song. Anyway, movies about writers are very strange. As a writer myself, they have a place in my heart of almost something to aspire to, as I see Calvin sit down at his desk with coffee and toast, when I sit down with a mug of hot chocolate, or with my Christmas tree scented candle, which I'm smelling right now. It's very nice. It's almost cathartic. And while I have to admit that I haven't seen too many movies about writers, my favorites being this one and Stuck in Love, Dead Poet Society, The End of the Tour, even You've Got Mail to a degree with Frank the Nut from The Observer, and having the opportunity to view how writers view the craft of writing, deciphering whether or not they're full of shit. Given that all movies are written by other writers, this movie, out of all of them, made me pay closer attention to the craft. I never understood how writers could write by hand, looking at you, Tarantino, or even by typewriter, Misery. It's laptop or bust for me. I make handwritten notes for my memory or for work, but when it comes to the craft, I need something to keep up with how fast my brain talks. 99 words a minute, buddy. My hands can't do that. The dreams are funny, and I like that they're an inspiration for him. For me, my ideas just come at random times, sometimes at the worst times when I don't have my phone anywhere near me and can't make a note. But I enjoy that Ruby first appears in Calvin's dream, and then he wakes up with that stroke of genius inspiration and dashes as fast as he can to his typewriter. That's just good stuff right there. It's energizing almost, like we're getting going. This is something different and new. I'm guessing that Calvin just wasn't writing for all that time since his first novel and was probably just seeking for human connection outside of his brother Harry, albeit poorly, and tries to exist with his almost guaranteed social anxiety. I love the relationship between Calvin and Harry, by the way. I don't have a brother, but I would have loved to have a brother like Harry. Unashamedly honest, deal with your own problems right now, I'll be there later. I don't like Harry all the time. He's frequently interested in just talking about sex, which I find boring and invasive because there's deeper things to talk about. But when he reads the first pages of Calvin's new story, he critiques it in the best way, with grace and truth, and it's understood, unspoken, that his opinion holds a lot of weight. He is the ideal reader, as Stephen King says. For me, that person is my wife. The moment when they test Ruby is real or not is a lot of fun. It's funny. It's really funny to me that they want to change what she's wearing, but then, like men, can't remember what she was wearing in the first place. The title image is super clean and pretty, and I really like it. I mentioned it before. It's almost as if you could miss it if you don't look up at the corner of the screen, but it's nice. It's a nice thought that the letters are formed by skywriters. It's funny to me in almost a sad kind of way that because of my years of using an alarm clock in my high school days, alarms in movies are now almost triggering to me. They're that annoying. I love that Calvin drops the book on the floor when he comes home from his speaking event. It's a good blink and you miss it moment of how Calvin feels about his first book after all that time. Langdon's jealousy is also really interesting since he's clearly been writing for years longer than Calvin has, yet Calvin is the more notable, more interesting author given his youth and genius. I love the little montage of inspired writing. I've had those days in my own writing, and it was inspirational in its own way for me. I really don't have anything to say about what I disliked about the movie. The most uncomfortable that it gets is because that's the story. It's supposed to be that way. It's not a flaw in the filmmaking, in the craft, or in the writing. But it's what happens when a controlling person takes too much control and doesn't get his way. He has to force his way, and it comes across as sad and disturbing because it is. It's almost strange to see someone as incomplete as Ruby, incomplete because she's only an idealized woman from Calvin's imagination, be able to react as normally as she does when everything is revealed to her in the end and being able to leave the house. That's to say, the climax of Calvin's control is horrifying. Though I think it goes on for a few beats too long when Ruby is chanting "You're a genius." Some of it is a stretch too far in the realm of uncomfortable, like her barking like a dog. As if the whole thing isn't traumatizing enough, she's dehumanized more than what any of us would ever hear in a situation about someone being dehumanized, literally becoming Calvin's puppet. It's some nasty shit that he puts her through, and I'd book it out of there too. And I'm guessing Calvin didn't pay for her much-needed therapy after the fact. He did find redemption in a sense, and he did the right thing and didn't deserve to keep Ruby in the end. And if I were Ruby, I wouldn't look at the last page. I wouldn't look at it at all. He left a mess because he is a mess. Emotional, clingy, and I'd sooner climb out the second story window than leave down the stairs if he was sleeping on the floor outside the door. I really don't like the ending, honestly. I will say that. I mean, it's kind of cute, but it's very 500 Days of Summer, but worse. In 500 Days of Summer, I wouldn't date a girl named Autumn if I had just gotten out of a relationship with a girl named Summer, and I wouldn't date a girl who looked exactly like the girl I made up, abused, and who ran away from me in the middle of the night. Like, think about that for a moment. And then think about what his family, specifically Harry, would think. The trash men are outside. I mean, it's pretty terrible. They play it as cute, but it comes across, it feels like there wasn't much thought put into it, and that's not great. As you know, it's a movie. You spent millions on this thing. Yeah. As dark as the movie gets, it's still wonderful. It's a movie about how to exist with another person, and like when we talked about Spike Jonze's Her, existing with another person is hard work. And somehow harder when you made up that person and could get them to do what you want, because even when you think you're getting them to do what you want, freedom is being in control, ironically enough. Near the end of the movie, Calvin becomes overwhelmed by her happy-go-lucky attitude, and instead of becoming normal, like Calvin intended, she grows apathetic and pursues other sources of attention, like humans do if we lower our boundaries and followed emotional or physical attention when we are given it. It's literally how every affair in history happens. Ruby was mistreated, and she briefly enjoyed the attention she got from Langdon, drunk and probably high as he was, because at least he didn't place any expectations on her, but rather encouraged her to do what she wanted. And to think I started this bit with saying how much I think this movie is wonderful. There's something about stories that show us as flawed humans. Not flawed in a I'm a jerk sometimes way, but more in a true detective kind of way. We can try to be decent, but we're humans, and sometimes, guess what? Humans can be selfish, disgusting people. But in a non-true detective way, we can find redemption. Ruby probably found herself and grew into a fully functioning, healthy person. And Calvin also found healing through therapy and also through writing his new book. I think there's some debate to be had on whether or not he should have sold the book and made money off of it, given that the book could only exist because he created and abused another person. That's a conversation for another time. I actually saw Ruby Sparks in theaters because I love Paul Dano. I also loved the idea, and I had to know how it was going to end. I saw a trailer, and I saw the idea, and I actually needed to know how it was going to end, how it was going to work out. I took a friend of mine to go see it, actually. We had a blast. This friend actually became the wife of another buddy, mutual lover of Fast and Furious, Brian. Hi, Brian. See you when we talk about the 70 Lexus. Anyway, we actually missed the first minute or so, but it was a wonderful movie experience. I gladly show this movie to any lover of rom-coms or indie cinema because it is a great movie. And honestly, I view it as a modern classic. I hope you watch it. It is truly something special. Ruby Sparks is a dark commentary on relationships, with Paul Dano as a dweeby writer who realizes that he can literally write his perfect girlfriend into existence. Ruby Sparks shows the thrill of initial connection before wading into disturbing waters regarding the writer's responsibility over their creation and that they are also ostensibly in a loving relationship with. I read that online somewhere, and I can't remember where it is or find it. I've tried several times. For some reason, I can't find it. But I think it's an excellent examination. Ruby Sparks is a piece of art that I will never part with. It's beautiful, charming, uncomfortable, thought-provoking, emotional, and striking in all the ways that good art should be. Don't forget, you can reply to this podcast with a voice message if you have the Anchor app, or you can send me an email at movielovershow@gmail.com if you want to request a movie be discussed, or hey, even co-host an episode. Still kind of undecided on how that's going to work, but hey, either way, you'll probably wind up on the next episode of Movie Lover 22. We'll see.